Lin is watering his garden, and the little girl from the neighbor's house is passing by his door carrying a school bag. Hey! Lin looked up and saw the girl stopping in front of his house calling him through the fence, so he put down the kettle and walked over. It's not very polite for you to do this. If you don't know my name, you can say to me, instead of hello. The girl pouted. She seemed to be unconvinced with Lin's words, because she obviously looked about the same age as her. But she didn't delve into this issue, but took a look at her yard, and then carefully took out a packet of dried fish from her school bag. She pursed her lips and handed the dried fish to Lin. Lin did not reach out for the first time, but looked at her and raised an eyebrow. Why, do you want to use this bag of dried fish to bribe me to let me play with you? If that is the case, then you gave it the wrong way. I like sweets, such as sweets, rather than salted fish. The girl kicked the fence of Lin En's house and made a face at him at the same time. I don't want you to play with me. This package of dried fish is not for you. It is for the stray cats that wander around every day. My mother forbids me to feed them, saying that they are full of viruses and bacteria. But in fact, I really want to raise a cat. My father said that if I can keep my current grades, I will buy me a clean cat when I grow up. But those stray cats are too pitiful. They are all cats, but they run around hungry every day. This is not fair. Yesterday I saw that you took some broken biscuits to feed them, so today I also bought some dried fish with my pocket money. I want you to take care of them for me. This consciousness is too high. Lin groaned silently in his heart. It can be seen that the girl is actually a talkative. She can't stop when she opens her mouth, but she has been a little arrogant before. Lin, who guessed the girl wrongly, didn't feel embarrassed. Anyway, his face was thick enough. He took the package of dried fish from the other party. Well, I happen to have nothing to do every day, so I can take care of them for you. After finishing speaking, he picked a lily from his yard and handed it to the girl. This will be my thank you gift for them. The girl didn't show her timidity. She took the lily flower from Lin's hand generously, and said with a grin. My name is Hermione Granger, how about you? Lin Belloc, it's not long since I moved here, so nice to meet you. Lin always felt that the girl's name was familiar, but he didn't think about it. After reported their names to each other, the relationship between the two parties naturally increased a lot. Hermione leaned on the fence of Lin's house and tiptoed lightly, peering into his house. Are you living alone? Lin took off his gloves and was very interested in chatting with Hermione. He had just moved to London not long after, plus the summer vacation was coming soon, so he didn't go to school. Now he has a lot of free time. Yes, I am the only one living here for the time being. Hermione's eyes widened. Where are your parents? Are they assured that you live here alone? They died when I was very young. I live with my adoptive father, but he doesn't usually come back. The expression on Lin's face was calm. But Hermione apologized with a sad look. I'm sorry, I don't know about you. Lin waved his hand indifferently. It doesn't matter, it was from when I was very young, and my life is actually pretty good now. What about you? Lin broke the subject. By the way, tapping on the situation of his neighbor's house, what do you do in your house? Hermione smiled and showed her teeth, very white. My parents are both dentists. If you have a toothache in the future, you can go to them. Dentist, that is a proper high-paying job in the UK, a veritable middle class. Moreover, British people attach great importance to oral health problems, and highly skilled dentists generally have a wide network of contacts. This neighbor can communicate more. While I am still young now, I can still be cheeky and sell cute, and make a good relationship. It will always help in the future. So, Lin gave an invitation with a bright smile. Would you like to come to my house and sit for a while? I cooked some mung bean soup at noon. In the summer, I can drink it to cool down my thirst. Hermione looked a little excited, but she glanced at her home again, and finally shook her head. Thank you, but I have been delayed for a long time. Mom will be anxious if I go home or not. Then next time. Lynn didn't try to stay, I will help take care of those stray cats. Hermione thinks that her new neighbor is a great person, and she will have a new friend in the future. Goodbye, Lynn. She waved to Lynn happily, her long fluffy hair was like a ball of cotton candy, and she trot back to her home. The appearance of Hermione was just an episode for Lynn. He put on his gloves again, humming a little song, and continued to take care of the blooming flowers in the garden. Lynn is a traverser. In his previous life, he was a people's teacher who had just been working for less than 2 years. As a result, he accidentally fell into the river while riding a tram on the way to work. He was drowned because he couldn't swim. When regained consciousness again, he became an orphan who had just lost his parents in a British orphanage called Starting Point. I really don't know if this is a lucky or unfortunate thing. But the good news is that his 2 parents, who died before they met, left him a huge inheritance. As long as he becomes an adult, he can inherit it, and then he is looking for a wife. Happy life. But capitalist welfare institutions are not really purely charitable. There are a lot of dirty things inside. UU reading www.uugonshu.com adds a group of problem children, although they are pitiful, they are all difficult masters. So when Lynn was 11 years old, he secretly used some tricks to find himself a cheap adoptive father, moved out of the orphanage, and returned to the home where his parents lived before his death. The current life is temporarily settled down, but Lynn has not thought about the future plan, nor does he intend to think about it. The plan cannot keep up with the changes. It will be a long time in the future. The more plans he makes now, the more he will regret in the future that he is completely wasting time. Since God arranged for him to be reborn in England in the second half of the 20th century, let's honestly talk about establishing a foothold in this country first. So, now the 11-year-old Lynn lives in the body of the 25-year-old soul and lives a 70-year-old life. He is also very helpless, but in this era, entertainment is really scarce. He really doesn't know what to do except raising flowers, weeding, and feeding cats. After finishing the home garden, Lynn put down the tools in his hand, took off his gloves, and stretched out towards the sunset in the sky. The air in London is very poor. Although efforts have been made to control it, the sky is sometimes greyish. Lynn squinted his eyes, and faintly he saw a small black spot flying towards him on the horizon. When the black spot approached, he could see that it turned out to be an owl. This kind of bird is not uncommon in the UK, so Lynn didn't care much. Instead, he mentioned the dried fish sent by the little girl named Hermione, locked the gate of the yard and prepared to go out to feed the cat. It's just that he didn't notice that the owl that flew over his head dropped a thick letter where he stood before. Then stood on the roof of his house and looked at his distant back, tilting his head in confusion. There is a narrow alley not far from Lynn's house. On the first day he moved here, when he went out to take out the garbage, he found a group of stray cats. Most of it was out of finding something to do for himself, and the younger half felt sorry for them, so Lynn would feed them some small snacks every few days, even if Hermione didn't say it, he would always come. Took out the small dried fish in the bag, Lynn tore it into strips and scattered it in front of the wild cats to prevent them from competing. The big cats and kittens all ate very happily. Lynn looked at it for a while, and he was greedy. He took out a dried fish from the bag and prepared to taste it. But at this moment, he suddenly felt in a corner of the shadow, something seemed to be staring at him. The sun has sunk completely below the horizon, there are no stars in the night sky tonight, and the moon's light is a little dim. The towering walls of the alley obscured the light from the street lamps outside, and Lynn couldn't help but feel a little hairy in his heart. Then he took the courage and walked into the shadows carrying the dried fish that he had not had time to eat. The creature peeping at him in secret is also a cat. That is a beautiful tabby cat. It doesn't look like a stray cat. Its hair is neat and tidy. There are spectacle-like patterns around its eyes. It stands straight on all fours. It is a cat, but it makes people feel very majestic. The tabby cat looked up and stared at Lin. The humane nodded slightly, and then it seemed that it was going to do something big. But the next moment, its body froze. Why don't you eat dried fish? Are you afraid of the wild cats? That's not good, you have to have a cat's AKO to be a cat. Lin stroked the head of the tabby cat, and squeezed its ears in a wicked way. The tabby cat seemed to have never expected such a situation, and her whole cat was stunned. Lin felt that the cat was a little silly, so he carried the dried fish and dangled in front of it. Do you want to eat dried fish? Dried fish, delicious dried fish. Tabby cat. Mimi, why don't you cat eat dried fish? Mimi. The tabby cat seems to have finally recovered from the shock, and its body has undergone a magical change. The hair faded and the body swelled. Almost in the blink of an eye, an old lady with a pointed hat and a pair of conspicuous square eyes on her face appeared in front of him. Mimi, shit! Lin was startled by the sudden change, and even subconsciously exploded his mother tongue. He fell to the ground with his butt, resting his hands on the ground, moving back in horror. The face of the old witch who stood upright was a little dark, but it was not very obvious in the night. Lin Belloc, you don't have to be too alarmed. Professor McGonagall, who had changed from cat to human, cleared his throat. Introduce myself, my name is Minerva McGonagall, I am the Vice President of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. You can call me Professor McGonagall. Lin seemed to be shocked. He was leaning back against the wall, unable to retreat, staring, with his mouth open, looking at Professor McGonagall, who turned from a cat to a human, for a long time, unable to speak. Come! The stray cats in the alley were all scared away during the accident. The night was quiet. Professor McGonagall looked at the dumbfounded Lin and lost his temper, trying to show his serious face. With a kind smile, he said, "Are you not going to invite me to sit in your house?" Lin's house. Professor McGonagall is sitting on the sofa, and Lin is graciously serving her water and tea. The reason why he was stunned just now was not stunned, but stunned. Who would have thought that he did not travel back to the past at all, but came to the wizarding world of Harry Potter? Well, after Lin admitted that he was shocked, he was indeed shocked. Because he just seemed to have probably kicked Hogwarts Vice President, Gryffindor's Lioness, Professor McGonagall's stern, cat head? Keeps asking why people don't eat dried fish. Lin wanted to die. It was too embarrassing for Nima, so embarrassed that he could buckle out a Hogwarts castle with his toes. So now, Lin can only use enthusiasm to relieve his embarrassment. Teacher, you drink water, hot water is good for your body. These are some small snacks I treasure, please try it. Wait. I almost forgot, don't drink the water, there is still mung bean soup I cooked in the pot, that quenches my thirst. Professor McGonagall just picked up the teacup, and had to put it down again full of black lines. Mr. Belloc, can you sit down and listen to me first? Lin smiled wryly, rubbed his hands and sat on the sofa obediently. Professor McGonagall saw that he finally stopped, and then he explained his intentions. As you can see, Mr. Belloc, I am a wizard from Hogwarts, the only and the best magic school in the UK. Before I came, an owl should have sent you a letter. Lin took out the letter he picked up at the door of his house when he just came back. Is it this? Professor McGonagall nodded. Yes, this should have been delivered to you. I don't know what went wrong with that owl. But this is not important, what is important is the admission notice in the letter. Lin also opened the envelope at this time and saw the admission notice with the Hogwarts school badge and Professor McGonagall's name signed. At the same time, an emotional voice suddenly sounded in his mind. It is detected that the host has been admitted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and the system activation conditions are fulfilled. The expression on Lin's face is very strange. There are too many surprises for him today. He has been in this world for more than 10 years, and he never thought that there was a system in his body. But since the bizarre things like crossing into the magical world happen, the appearance of the system doesn't seem to be a big deal. There are so many weird things. Lin is already numb now. I'm afraid he will become a strange shape if it continues like this. Professor McGonagall didn't see Lin's problem. Instead, she felt normal with this reaction. After all, for Muggles, being admitted to a magic school is indeed an incredible thing. Mr. Belloc, I think you already understand the current situation. Then, would you like to go to Hogwarts for 7 years of magic learning? Although there is no option to refuse this question, Professor McGonagall still asked Lin seriously. The system in my mind just said a sentence and then it didn't respond anymore. Lin didn't care about it either. Now I'll finish dealing with Professor McGonagall. No surprise, Lin would naturally not refuse to learn magic, something that countless people dream of. I'm very happy, Professor McGonagall. There was a slight smile on Professor McGonagall's face, but then she looked around, frowning and asking. Where is your family? They need to know about this. Lin shrugged, I am an orphan. My parents died when I was very young. Now my guardian is my adoptive father. Professor McGonagall's expression is a bit heavy. I'm sorry to talk about your sad child, but this matter must be approved by your guardian. Lin is not embarrassed about this, he said readily. It's okay, Professor, but he should not be in London now, but we can call him. Lin picked up the telephone receiver placed on the coffee table, looked at Professor McGonagall, and asked with his eyes whether it was okay. Although Professor McGonagall doesn't know much about Muggle things, she obviously knows the function of the telephone. After all, the entrance to the Ministry of Magic for Outsiders is a telephone booth. She nodded, and after indicating that there was no problem, Lin dialed the call. There was a calm male voice on the other end of the phone. Something. I will go to a magic school in 2 months, probably for 7 years. The school professor is sitting next to me now. You need to know about enrollment. Lin didn't mess with it, and went straight to the point. The other end of the phone was silent for a few seconds. Okay, I know. You still need your consent. I agreed. Okay, it's okay, that's it. Kindness. The call then hung up, and the talk time did not exceed 30 seconds. This time, Professor McGonagall's turn was stunned. She has been a professor for a long time. To say nothing, she has been to hundreds of Muggle freshmen's homes, but she has never seen such an easy acceptance of the magical world and rest assured that she can give her children to their parents. Lin was not surprised by this. In other words, he was the adoptive father he carefully selected, and there is naturally a little understanding of cooperation. Although it sounds bad, I have to say that your adoptive father doesn't seem to be very responsible. He doesn't seem to know the current situation. After recovering, Professor McGonagall frowned. Lin spread his hands and looked at her helplessly, but the result is the same. You may not know my situation very much. To be honest with you, I didn't have a very happy life in the orphanage before, so now I actually got my adoptive father at my own expense. He became my guardian through legal means, gave me enough freedom before adulthood, and promised to fully cooperate with all my decisions, as long as he signs where he needs to sign. And I have to guarantee that after I have the right to inherit the inheritance of my parents, I will pay him a certain amount. To put it simply, the adoption relationship between us is a purely monetary transaction. Lin is telling the truth, but the process is of course not that simple. After all, a few-year-old child and an adult make a deal, and it is definitely not enough to rely on money alone. In addition, he also used some elusive little tricks, which are not enough for outsiders. Listening to Lin's account, the expression on Professor McGonagall's face gradually softened. She is not really hard-hearted, just a cold face and a warm heart. This is a common problem of cats. Poor boy, your situation is indeed a bit special. Professor McGonagall had already made up in his mind how young Lin dealt with the dark and sinister adults, and finally could only rely on cold money transactions to gain freedom. She didn't dare to think deeply about the difficulties she had experienced. She thought for a moment, then continued. Before heading to Hogwarts, you still need to go to Diagon Alley to shop for related learning materials and textbooks. Although it is not as dangerous as Knockdown Alley, I think it is better to have an adult go with you. So after a while, Hogwarts will send another professor over to help you complete the pre-entry preparations. After that, be sure to pay attention to the letter sent by the owl. No problem, Professor. Lin naturally didn't have any opinion on this. Although he wouldn't have trouble going to Diagon Alley alone, it would be better to have someone who is familiar with the magical world. And the professors in Hogwarts are a group of great teachers, even Snape is just a bit flawed in character. It's certainly not a bad thing to be able to get a familiar face in advance. All that should be said, Professor McGonagall didn't sit down much, and she had to go to the next Muggle freshman's home for enrollment guidance. Before leaving, she gave Lin a rare smile. You can see, Belloc, you are a noble, resourceful, and brave child, and Hogwarts is looking forward to your arrival. Lin scratched his hair shyly, just about to say something humble, suddenly that familiar voice rang in his mind. You have been praised sincerely by Professor Minerva McGonagall of the Transfiguration course, with +1 Transfiguration talent and +1 Transfiguration effect. At the same time, Lin felt that some changes had taken place in his body, but he couldn't tell what kind of changes it was. But to be sure, this is a change for the better. Lin's expression suddenly changed, his eyes eagerly looked at Professor McGonagall who was about to apparate away. Then we will see you at Hogwarts. Wait, Professor. Come on, quickly praise me again. Professor McGonagall stopped the hand that was about to wave the magic wand by mistake, wondering if there was a problem with his ears. Although Westerners are more external, but they are not so shameless. McGonagall looks at Lin with a weird look, as if to see through his face, whether there are any walls in Hogwarts Castle. Thick. Professor, you know, I'm an orphan. Lin looked at her blankly, giving full play to her acting skills. Since I was a child, I have lived in order and harshness. Even the adoptive father who adopted me now is just coveting the inheritance left by my parents, so I have never heard others praise me. Your praise just now almost made me shed tears with excitement. Lin said, sobbing quietly, as if she was really moved and crying. Maybe my request is a bit unreasonable, but I still ask you, can you praise me once? Professor McGonagall lived such a young age, it is not that easy to deceive. She looked suspiciously at Lin, who was full of acting skills, always feeling as if something was wrong. Seeing that the performance didn't work, Lin could only continue to increase his efforts. He wiped the teardrop that was finally squeezed out from the corner of his eye, and sighed. Well, Professor, I was abrupt. People like me really don't have any strengths. They don't even have the qualifications to be praised by the teacher. Cough cough cough. When Lin said that, Professor McGonagall felt a little sorry. After all, he was only an 11-year-old child, and it was when others needed to approve it. Don't be underestimated, Belloc, you. The time of acquaintance is too short, and Professor McGonagall can't think of any compliments except for the 2 words that he just uttered. Lin had to give her a hint. You see that I am not bad, and I can find myself an adoptive father. How filial. Professor McGonagall held back for a long time, and finally came out a sentence. You are a good boy. The next moment, there was a voice in Lin's mind. You got the good guy card from the Transfiguration class, Professor Minerva McGonagall. Nothing happened. Lin, who was still elated 1 second before, turned green in the next second. I don't even want my face, but this is the end? Professor McGonagall, who had lied, is now all over. It's getting late, Mr. Belloc, I must leave. Walk slowly and don't give it away, Professor. After Professor McGonagall left, Lin called out the system in his head and saw his current attribute panel. Title: None free points, 0 main task, go to Hogwarts, UU reading www.uuganshu.com reward, close your brain. Limited time task, 1. Get a magic wand, reward, magic index +1, countdown 30 days. 2. Successfully release the first enchantment, reward, 1 free point countdown for 40 days. Note: there is no penalty for failure of a time-limited mission. Lin researched his attribute panel for a long time, didn't even eat dinner, and probably saw some doors. Except transfiguration, divination, and black magic, his other magic talents are all 2, and the full value is 10, which means that 2 is probably the talent level of a normal wizard. Transfiguration is 3 because of Professor McGonagall's praise, the system gave him a +1 point. Fortune telling is 0. Lin can also understand, after all, this kind of gods and Taoism ability is purely based on talents. If you have it, you don't have it, and it's basically impossible to cultivate it. And the thing he can't understand the most is the talent for black magic. What the is it with 5 points at the beginning? He was born as a villain? Lin's face was a little dark, and he felt that his kind personality was under suspicion. As for the main tasks and time-limited tasks below, there is nothing left to say. Going to Hogwarts is almost a matter of deciding. Occlumency, the magic he needs most now, is equivalent to giving away for nothing. The next 2 time-limited tasks are not difficult either, but he doesn't know what Professor McGonagall said, when the professor who took him to Diagon Alley will come. If the opponent hasn't arrived until the end of the mission, Lin will also look for it by himself. Although he doesn't even know the approximate location of the Broken Cauldron Bar, there is always a way. Even with the system, knowing that he was about to go to Hogwarts to learn magic, Lin's next life remained unchanged. 3 consecutive weeks passed. On this day, Hermione asked Lin to feed the stray cats. Do you think there are any cats in this world who are not interested in dried fish? Lin fed for a while and didn't bother to move. He worked as an overseer on the side, watching Hermione tirelessly handing dried fish to the cat's mouth. At the same time I was eager to hit them, but some didn't dare to start. Of course he now knows that the little girl in front of him is the Hermione Granger in the trio. Sometimes I really have to sigh, the world is really wonderful. Perhaps there is. For example, when a cat eats high-quality cat food every day, then it may not be interested in dried fish. As for Lin's question, Hermione had obviously thought about it before answering. Lin exudes thoughts, wondering if Professor McGonagall would steal high-end cat food at Hogwarts. Then you said, will there really be cats in this world that turn into beautiful girls to repay their favor? Even the older cat lady, let's wait for Lin to repay her preaching and karma to solve the problem. But it's not impossible to have a little cat girl, after all, no one stipulates that everyone's animagus must be different. What you said is getting more and more outrageous. How come there is such a thing? Hermione turned her head and gave Lin a blank look, thinking that he was entertaining herself. The 2 people got along for a long time, and naturally they started talking casually. For Lin, who is currently extremely scarce of entertainment activities, teasing this somewhat talkative and tsundere girl every day provides him with almost 80% of the fun of the boring days. Lin looked up at the grey sky of London, and a few white pigeons fluttered past. He suddenly remembered that before the little wizard entered Hogwarts to learn magic and control his own magic, there would be more or less magical riots. Just like him, it was through this that he found his now honest and stable adoptive father. And Hermione is almost 10 years old now, and it is estimated that she will receive a letter of acceptance from Hogwarts next year, which means that she must have had at least one magic riot. So, he looked at Hermione and narrowed his eyes with a smile. That's not necessarily true, Hermione. Do you believe in superpowers in this world? You can't talk about magic, even if you can be sure that the other party will become a little wizard in the future. But magic can't, superpower can be. The little girl obviously didn't have any intentions. When she heard Lin's question, her body became stiff, and her eyes floated. Sure, no, we are already big kids, how can we still believe in that kind of thing? Ding! Acting LV10, start. Lin looked heavy, like a correspondent who informed the White House that Pearl Harbor had been attacked. Don't hide from me, Hermione, you actually awakened superpowers, right? Suddenly, Hermione looked at Lin helplessly as if her husband found out that there was a man's wife outside, and stuttered to admit it. You, how do you know? Because people with superpowers can sense each other. The first time I saw you, I saw that you are extraordinary. Lin stood up, with his hands behind his back, looking like an extraordinary man. Then why, I didn't sense you? Hermione wasn't that kind of foolishness, she found Hwadian. Ahem. Unexpectedly, she would doubt it. Unexpectedly, Lin could only cough twice, and then quickly thought of the reason. Maybe your superpower is too weak. My superpower can kill the person named Zhang San. Can your superpower change someone else's name to Zhang San? Hermione was distracted by Lin's nonsense. My superpowers are not that powerful. Her expression was a little ashamed. I don't know what it does, but once I disappeared the glass in the room when I was extremely angry. Mom and Dad, I don't believe this is what I did. So it's because your superpowers are unstable. It's too weak to sense me. Lin looked up at the sky 45 degrees, like a sad poet, but this is also a good thing, so I can't find you anymore. Who are they? Hermione has fallen into the trap. They are an evil organization. Lin said solemnly, specially looking for people with superpowers like you and me, and then bullying and temptation, working for them. They found me not long ago. Hermione had been fooled, and she was shocked to hear the words. Then Lin, you now. Lin sighed sadly. Although I can kill people named Zhang San, they are not named Zhang San, and I have no choice but to be forced to join them. However, I have issued a poisonous oath and will never use my superpowers to kill indiscriminately. Innocent, so you can rest assured that I will not be a bad person. Lin. Hermione shook her two small hands in front of her, looking at him admiringly, thinking that her friend is really great. I tried my best to get the evil organization to give me a 2-month vacation every summer. After 2 months, I will be taken to their headquarters to cooperate with related research. Hermione, I will try my best to conceal your existence in the organization so that you can continue to live such a peaceful and happy life. I almost believed what Lin said. Of course the little girl was so touched, she couldn't wait to drag Lin to elope on the spot and escape to the ends of the world to stay away from this worldly dispute. You are very good, Lin, but will you be in danger there? Or let's run away. I secretly saved some pocket money, about £9.15. Lin interrupted Hermione abruptly. Don't thank me, Hermione, who made us friends. Don't talk about running away. We can't run away if they are too powerful. Even if we run away, what about your parents? Think about them. What to do? Don't worry. Lin was afraid to scare the little girl too hard, so reading www.yuyuganshu.com was counterproductive. Then comforted, my superpowers are very useful to them, so they won't hurt me, and I can come back for 2 months to see you every year, you don't have to worry, just. Seeing that Lin seemed to be embarrassed, Hermione wiped her tears and asked hurriedly. But what? But after I left, no one at home took care of it. Lin Enta saw it in a hurry, and finally revealed his sinister purpose. My flowers, windows, and floors, etc., will be covered with dust. It's uncomfortable to think about it. Hermione has been completely crippled. Lin, if you believe me, you can leave it to me. After you leave, I will take care of your garden and promise to clean the house for you every week. Of course I believe you, we are friends. When the trickery succeeded, Lin's eyes were almost squinted. We are friends. You have gained the trust of Hermione Granger and you have the title, Despicable Abductor. Effect: 1. There is a 50% chance that children under 16 will absolutely believe what you say. 2. Parents with children under the age of 16 have halved the favorability of you. 3. When a lie is exposed, 100% will be beaten. Note 1. The title effect will only take effect when worn. Note 2. After effect 1 is successfully activated, even if the title has been removed, effect 3 will still be effective. Remarks: You asked me what are the consequences of abducting minors? Haha, just 3 high deaths. Kidnap. That is a white lie. Kindly understand. After returning home, Lin bitterly criticized his system and vowed to never put on this shameful title. This is a slander on the personality of others, the trampling of ethics, which must be resisted. Throwing the system aside, Lin was preparing dinner while thinking about going to London to take a look tomorrow. There is still less than 10 minutes before the end of the time-limited mission, and the professor that Professor McGonagall said that he will come over has never heard of it. The task reward Lin is definitely not going to miss, so he can't wait any longer. Just when he was washing the tomatoes on his hands and his soul was flying away, a sudden movement came from the window of the living room. Lin heard the noise, turned his head and looked out the window, and found an owl looking at him through the glass. Sure enough, good people are rewarded. Just after telling a white lie today, the Hogwarts owl came that night. Lin opened the window for the owl, got a thin envelope from it, and then broke it with some crumbs and poured a bowl of water to entertain the guest from afar. I didn't make the meal. Lin sat on the sofa and opened the envelope. There was only a piece of paper inside. Dear Mr. Belloc, Professor Adrian Fox from the Defense Against the Dark Arts class will visit at 9 a.m. on July 3. Sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Vice Principal. Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts class? Lin tilted his head in thought with the letter. It is said that the position of Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts was cursed by Voldemort, and Lin did not know whether the rumors were true. But the defense professor at Hogwarts does have an accident every year, that is to say, it is changed every year. This year is 1990, and there is still 1 year before the beginning of the Harry Potter school plot. And this Professor Fox, who has the same surname as Dumbledore's pet Phoenix, is a character who has not appeared in the original book. His temper and character are unknown to Lin. This makes him a little headache. Who knows what happened to the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor this year? As everyone knows, Dumbledore's vision for the defense class professor has always been unreliable. What if this Professor Fox is a dark wizard? It's better to let Snape's wifeless face. Damn it! Didn't you say that good people are rewarded? Just as Lin was frowning, the letter delivery owl was already full and satisfied. It flew around the living room with satisfaction, as if thanking Lin for his hospitality, and then flew into the night sky. She's Hiran. I can't think of any clues, so Lin simply didn't think about it. Since Professor McGonagall will let him take him to Diagon Alley to purchase, it shows that he trusts his character. Professor McGonagall is a responsible principal. Since she is someone she trusts, there shouldn't be any problems. When the soldiers will come to block, the water will cover the soil, and tomorrow's affairs will be left to tomorrow's self. Today, he will fix today's supper first. Early the next morning, Lin finished his daily morning run. After breakfast, he prepared refreshments to meet guests and waited for Professor Fox's visit. But he waited left and right, waiting until it was close to 10 o'clock and didn't wait for the professor to arrive. Just as Lin waited impatiently and felt like he was being released, there was a loud noise in his backyard. Through the window, you can see the outside like a plane crashing, and large swaths of damp mud mixed with turf fly all over the sky. Lin's face changed, and he hurriedly ran from the living room to the backyard, and then saw a scene full of mess. An old man with silver hair and a slender figure is lying on the ground of his house in a posture of dog feces. Behind there is a flying broom that was broken into 2 sections, trembling crazily. The most painful thing for Lin to breathe was that a large piece of turf was destroyed. He has not inherited the inheritance yet. The monthly expenses are fixed and a limited amount is deducted from the inheritance. The money saved has to be exchanged for Jin Jialong at Diagon Alley. There is no money left to exchange for such a large piece of money. The turf is gone. Just as Lin fell into the grief of poverty, this time the perpetrator, the old silver-haired man, staggered up from the ground. He was wearing a long windbreaker with white lining and even a tie. A little mud and grass leaves made him look a little embarrassed, but he still couldn't hide his detached temperament. Lin Belloc. The old man shook the dirt on his glasses, and asked as he put it on his face. Lin was pulled back to his senses by his voice. Yes, it's me. It's you, it seems I didn't fly the wrong route. I am your Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts, Adrian Fox. You can call me Professor Fox. Professor Fox's voice was slightly hurried. After he stood firm, he took out his wand and waved it at the 2 poor flying broomsticks, and they immediately fell silent. Before Lin could open his mouth to speak, he turned back and grabbed Lin's arm and pulled him into the living room. Then what? Stop talking, boy, listen to me. After entering the room, Professor Fox breathed heavily again, and his voice quickly interrupted Lin. My body is in some trouble now, so I need you to help me prepare something. This is very important, can you understand it? Although he didn't know what was going on, Lin could see that the face of the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor did indeed appear unhealthily pale. Clear. Seeing that the situation is indeed urgent now, Lin is not talking nonsense. After arriving in the living room, Professor Fox began to take things out of his trench coat pocket. Is like a different dimensional pocket of a Doraemon. The space inside seems to be endless. Soon the mess piled up beside Professor Fox. Crucible, alcohol stove, tuber, grease, powder, I need wine, alcohol and red wine are not good. Must be wine fermented with barley. Professor Fox soon discovered what he was missing. He looked at Lin eagerly, as if time was running out. Lin pressed for a moment, then shook his head quickly. There is no beer in my house, but there is a convenience store 200 meters east of here, I can buy it. Professor Fox seemed to be in a really bad state, and he looked at Lin gratefully. Please, Belloc. You are holding on to the professor, I'll be back soon. Lin picked up his jacket and ran out of the house, with a clear goal and headed straight for the convenience store. Under the surprised eyes of the convenience store salesperson, Yu reads www.yuuganshu.com directly took the canned beer, threw the money on the counter, and ran home again without even looking for change. Until he ran away, the cashier remembered that he was still a minor and the law required to buy any alcoholic beverages, but he couldn't find it at this time. On the way back, Lin suddenly felt something wrong. The professor just looked like he was going to make potions, but how can there be a recipe for potions that requires beer? And this professor is too anxious. He doesn't look like he is being chased. If he knows the potion that can solve physical problems, it proves that he is definitely not ill for the first time. Medicine should always be available, and it is impossible to refine it on the spot. The more Lin thought about it, the more he felt something was wrong, and the more he felt something was wrong, the faster he ran back. Less than 5 minutes back and forth, he returned home. As soon as the living room door opened, Lin smelled a tempting fragrance. The scene in front of him stunned him. On the chopping board, 2 kitchen knives were not controlled by anyone, but they were swung up and down quickly. Fresh potatoes and lettuce were neatly sliced into thin skins, and one by one jumped into the plate as if they had long legs. The old man who claimed to be Professor Fox was sitting in the middle of the living room, holding a pair of chopsticks that came out of the kitchen, and quickly dropped the lamb into the boiling cauldron. Oh, Belloc, you came back so fast, I didn't expect that there were chopsticks in your house, so I had to use transfiguration to make a pair of them. The alcohol stove is burning, and the red soup in the cauldron is floating with bright oil. Professor Fox smiled and looked at the door, looking at Lin with a dull-eyed beer, just like an old fox stealing a chicken. Lin resisted the urge to hit the dead old man's head with the beer in his hand, and squeezed his temper to pull the small bench to the opposite side of him. Professor Fox seemed unaware of Lin's grievance, and couldn't wait to grab the beer from his hand. Dark beer made in Germany. He smacked his lips. Tisk tusk, I don't like the taste very much, but I can barely accept it. He tore open the beer bag and threw a can to Lin. Lin took the beer and rolled his eyes. I am still a minor and cannot drink alcohol. Even though he said that, he still opened the tab. What happened today was a bit fucking. Professor Fox smiled as he watched Lin's duplicity. He laughed a lot like Lin, he couldn't help squinting his eyes. I squint my eyes every day when I'm so old, no wonder there are so many lines on the corners of my eyes, Lin also took a pair of chopsticks for himself, dipped it in the soup in the cauldron, and tasted it. The taste was very familiar. Professor Fox took a sip of beer and said triumphantly, "Today, you are going to enjoy your taste. This is the delicious taste I brought back from Chengdu when I was traveling in China. Just brush the ingredients gently into the boiling soup, and you can taste the supreme delicacy. As for those 5-star hotels, they cheat foreigners. The true Oriental food is actually hidden in the streets and alleys. They can't fool me. You make German wine and I make Chinese food. You make a lot of money. Isn't just hot pot? It's like someone didn't eat one." Although there was a hot pot as compensation, Lin still remained angry. He stared at Professor Fox's strangely pale face and said, "If you are in poor health and drink spicy beer, don't accidentally die." Fox waved his hand nonchalantly. "Don't worry, I'm just a little afraid of heights. Besides, didn't I ask you to buy medicine for me?" He smiled and raised his hand of beer. "This is the cure for all diseases." Lin looked at him suspiciously, suspecting that the unscrupulous professor was fooling himself again. Wizards also have a fear of heights. Of course there will be. Fox can't wait to put a piece of hot cooked lamb into his mouth. He uses chopsticks very skillfully, and it seems that he did not eat less when he was traveling in China. Wizards are also human beings. Of course they will get sick as long as they are human. Don't have such a big grievance, Belluck. Do you know how much I have committed to come to you? Because I've never been here, I can't apparate. I can only go to the Broken Cauldron bar. I don't have a Muggle currency on me. It's too bad to go to Gringotts to exchange money with those fairies, Muggles. I couldn't get on the transportation, so I had to ride a flying broomstick to fly over. But my fear of heights is very serious. I really can't control the broom. After flying for about 10 minutes, I can't hold it anymore. Then I fell from the sky, but fortunately, I finally reached my destination." Fox drank 2 sips, and began to pour Lin's bitterness. Listening to what he said, Lin really has no temper. People came all the way to help an 11-year-old child familiarize themselves with the magic world. It was nothing to ask him to have a drink. After thinking about it, Lin was also happy to have a hot pot and drink beer and chat with Fox. "I heard that the professor teaches defense against the dark arts class." "That's right." Fox shook the beer can in his hand. "I originally applied for a magic text professor. If I owed Dumbledore a favor, I wouldn't have come to do this very risky misery. I can pray for a good end this year." "Why? Is there any danger in being a professor of defense against the dark arts?" Lin asked knowingly. "Danger?" Fox gave a chuckle, poured half a can of beer into his stomach, and then looked at Lin. "Do you know how many defense against the dark arts professors have been changed at Hogwarts since 1956? Lin shook his head blankly. 21 of them, of which 12 years have not been used to set up this professorship. Guess how many of these 21 people died accidentally during their tenure? 10. Lin tentatively said a compromise number. Guess again. 13. It was 14, with a mortality rate of more than 60%. One surviving one could only lie in bed all his life, and 2 were disabled for life. Lin took a breath. He knew it was dangerous to be a professor of defense against the dark arts at Hogwarts, but he had never thought that the death rate would be so high. Then, the other wizards are not fools, who would be willing to apply for a job with such a high risk? Lin asked his doubts. Do you think these data will be released at Hogwarts? Even if I am determined to be the professor of this year, I found the relevant files in the Hogwarts library and compiled them together. It's because of my conscience. Fox took the chopsticks and fished for the meat slices in the pot. If you change to someone else, you will be scared to see these data. What is the source of the danger? Lin asked cautiously. Fox toasted and touched Lin, and drank the beer in the can. Who knows? His eyes were deep and he didn't know what he was thinking. There are rumors that this position was cursed by a man called the Dark Lord, and some people say that these are actually Dumbledore's conspiracies. Some people say it's just a coincidence. But who can tell the truth? Lin thought that Fox was worried about his safety in the next year, so he comforted. Teach you a good luck, there will be no problems. Fox opened a can of beer again. Stop talking about the mess, you read www.yuyugonshu.com and tell me about you. Minerva wrote to tell me that you are a ghost, and now it seems that your conversation and demeanor are really not as good as you should be at your age. It looks like. Lin shrugged and pretended to be casual, getting more means giving more. I don't think this is a good thing. Fox didn't doubt it too much. He nodded in agreement. You're really not a commendable thing about being a teenager. I heard that you even found your adoptive father at your own expense. It's not a cost, I just signed a non-legally binding agreement with him, promising that after I inherit my parents' estate, I will transfer 1/3 of the estate to him as a reward. Is he actually willing? Of course he doesn't want to. Lin sipped his beer and shook his head. Who would make a fair deal with a kid? He wanted to trick me into not signing an agreement, and really adopt me and be my guardian, so that the money my parents left me might be his in the future. I'm not stupid. It happened at the time of the magical riot, and he thought he would eat me and did not put me in his eyes, so he used some small means to pinch the handle of his embezzlement of public funds, half coercedly forcing it. He signed the conditional adoption agreement. Fox looked at him in astonishment. How old were you then? It's about 10 years old. Lin thought for a while. It seems not long after his 10th birthday. Fox was stunned for a long time before he laughed dumbfounded. It seems that Minerva did not make a mistake, you are indeed a ghost. He put down his chopsticks and beer, and suddenly looked at Lin with a smile. I think you are very temperamental with me. Are you interested in accepting my investment? Mr. Belloc. Lin was shocked. It is not surprising that he can add some points to him when he is praised by the professor. After all, this has been reflected in Professor McGonagall before. As long as the praise is sincere, the professors of each subject will add points to various magics. The compliments of the professor in the defense against the dark arts class can be understood by adding some points to the offensive and defensive spells. But, what is it to add something to the dark magic talent? You are a defense against the dark magic. The black magic is getting stronger and stronger, you are defensive. And his talent for dark magic is already high enough, is it going to make him become a dark wizard after adding it? Fox thought that Lin was considering the investment proposal he had just made, so he didn't bother to speak out. Instead, a person who was happy to see enjoyed the lamb that was just made in the hot pot. Thinking about it, Lin speculated that there are 3 possibilities for this situation. The first one is the most likely. The problem lies in the course of defense against the dark arts, which is very special. The second is that Fox just praised him not only, but also added some points to him when he proposed to invest, but there is no explanation for why it was added to the black magic, so the second may be a bit far-fetched. The third type is also Lin's most inclined one, that is, his own defense against the dark arts professor, his own problem. Fox found Lin looking at him, and asked aloud. How are you thinking about it? Although I live alone now, I still have a fixed monthly living allowance payment, so, sorry professor, I am not short of money. Lin didn't get a compliment, and after taking another 2 sips of beer, he forgot about the East and the West. Investors invest for returns and gains. Now they get a sum of money that they don't really need. Who knows what he will pay in the future? Lin's refusal didn't surprise Fox, he didn't treat him as a child now. Although you are very smart, you don't know much about the magic world, Belloc. Lin is full, but Fox is still putting potatoes and lettuce in the hot pot. The currency of the magic world is not the same as the currency of Muggles. Oh, the Muggle here refers to ordinary people who don't know or believe in magic. The Bank of the Wizarding World, although Gringotts has the business of Muggle currency exchange for the magical world currency, that is, Jin Jialong, this exchange is not endless. The group of fairies are not fools. Some of them even pretended to be humans and went to Muggle Oxford University to study economics and received a degree certificate. Therefore, the currency exchange rules they set are limited, fluctuating, and change at any time according to the currency inventory of the magic world and economic needs. This year is very unfortunate. Because of the economic downturn in the Muggle world, they strictly limit the exchange of currency. Even if you pay a lot of pounds, you can only exchange up to 10 gallons. For 10 golden gallons, a wand requires at least 7. You still have to save some money for emergencies. Do you still have the money to prepare the remaining school robes, books, cauldrons, etc.? Lin does not have a deep understanding of the magical world, not to mention how much he remembers the plot of the original. Even if he remembers all of them, there must not be much introduction to many related details in the original. For example, currency, he really didn't know the specific exchange rules. But ignorance does not mean that Lin has no doubts about Fox's words. But students from a Muggle family like me are definitely not an exception. If they don't have enough money to buy magic items, what should they do when they go to school? Hogwarts won't just sit back and watch, right? Of course not. In previous years, if such a situation was encountered, the Ministry of Magic and the school board would jointly fund. Hogwarts came forward to give a subsidy to the students of Muggle families. Although not much, it was enough to keep them tight. Baba meets daily needs. But the past 2 years have changed. The Ministry of Magic and the Hogwarts Board of Trustees are reducing school expenses, especially since the Board of Trustees is basically composed of pure-blood families. The direction of the knife is of course you little wizards from Muggle families. What Fox didn't say was too blunt. There are many twists and turns, the contradiction between Dumbledore and the Ministry of Magic, the contradiction between Dumbledore and the school board, the contradiction between the academic school and the family school, and most importantly, the contradiction between blood and non-pure blood. Dumbledore has made the biggest fight for you. In addition to the necessities like the magic wand, other things like school gowns and books, crucibles, students from Muggle families can receive gifts from recent graduates, that is to say, you can use the second-hand goods they have used. But I think, Belloc, you are definitely not a person who is willing to treat yourself badly. If there are new ones, who would use the old ones? Lin was silent. In fact, he said to himself in his heart, that's not necessarily, if it was a potion textbook used by the Half-Blood Prince, he would be very happy to use a second-hand one. So if I accept your investment, what return do you need to get, Professor? Lin asked. The smile on Fox's face became stronger, and it was obvious that Lin was moved by it. I need you to come to me after graduation and be my assistant for a few years. Assistant? Lin frowned, can't others? There are many talents in the magical world. Why do I have to? Facing Lin's series of questions, Fox smiled mysteriously at him. What I study is not ordinary things, Belluck. You reading www.yuyugonshu.com, you have not yet enrolled in school, so you don't know a lot about things in the magic world. Even if I say something, you may not understand it, I need to know that I will definitely not let you do things that hurt the world, but it will require extensive knowledge of magic, multi-angle thinking ability, and to be able to accept something that the magic world cannot accept. After listening to him, Lin looked at Fox with a weird expression, wondering if the thing he was talking about was black magic. You are so sure that I will meet the requirements you said after graduation? Fox looked at him with a smile. So I said this is an investment. If you fail to meet the requirements by then, it means that my investment has failed, but the loss is only a sum of money. Anyway, maybe I won't survive the time you graduated from Hogwarts. I'm not at all sure if I can spend the year at Hogwarts without incident. Lin was lost in thought. To be honest, he has no resistance to black magic. Magic itself is innocent. The guilty is the use of magic. What's more, his own talent for black magic is extremely high, and Hogwarts doesn't. Teaching black magic, this is not an opportunity for him. Of course, he can't be 100% sure that what Fox is talking about is black magic, but the chances are really high. And, as he said, Lin hasn't even enrolled in school yet, and it is even more invisible until he graduates. There will be a series of things in the restoration of Voldemort in the middle, and no one will know what changes will happen at that time. Knowledge. So Lin made his decision. Happy transaction, Professor Fox. He raised his beer, smiled and blinked. Did you see the white building? That is the Wizard's Bank, Gringotts, which belongs to the fairyland in the magical world. Fox acted as a guide for Lin, introducing him to various shops in Diagon Alley. Fairies control the wizard's economy? Aren't they afraid of stealing them? Lin felt very strange about this. Non-me races must have different minds. They have similar words everywhere. The wizards are not stupid. They must also know this truth. No, you don't know enough about them. Fox shook his head. Goblins are nominally independent, but they are still under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Magic and are vassals of wizards. They are the defeated, deprived of the right to use magic wands. Don't underestimate this. Without the magic wand, they would never be able to make a big storm. And let them manage wealth more reliably than the wizards themselves. In terms of money, the spirit of contract of the fairies has withstood the test of the times. Lin has no interest in the history of the magic world. He can't wait to get a wand of his own. Then shall we go to Gringotts to withdraw money next? Fox took out his pocket watch and checked the time. Well, there has been a long delay at noon. I have a dinner party to attend after 6 o'clock. Let's split up. I went to Gringotts to withdraw money. You first took the money on my body to buy books and magic wands, then went to the Madame Morkan robe shop to order school uniforms, and finally waited for me over there. No problem. Fox took out a purse from himself and handed it to Lin. Lin shook the purse. There was a pleasant metal crashing sound inside. He opened it and counted it. There were almost 20 gold coins. A total of 25 gold gallons, enough for you to buy everything you need to go to school. Of course, my investment must be more than that, but the remaining money will wait for me to withdraw from Gringotts. Fox pointed out the location of Ollivanders' wand shop to Lin, and then the two separated. There are many people in Diagon Alley. This is the largest commercial street in the magical world in the UK. Almost all the magic items that can be bought through regular channels are available here. Of course, if you want illicit goods, you have to go to Knockdown Alley next door. The Ollivander wand shop was not as easy to find as Lin expected. He walked in the direction that Fox pointed to him for a long time, only to see a slightly dilapidated facade. Ollivander has been the best wand maker since 382 BC. The narrow wooden door is printed with golden letters that have been partially peeled off. It is the best in my house to make rods for thousands of years. After Lin En silently vomited a groove in his heart, he reached out and pushed open the wooden door that seemed to fall at any time. Jingle bell! The crisp doorbell was very pleasant, and he walked into the cabin. Upon seeing it, the room is full of tall wooden cabinets. Oh, I didn't expect that there would be guests coming today. A short old man walked out from behind a row of wooden cabinets. He looked with a smile on his face, and was looking at Lin, who was decorated in the shop with curious eyes, and asked in a gentle voice, "Are you the new wizard at Hogwarts this year?" Lin nodded and said, "Yes, sir, I need a magic wand." "You should be the latest one this year." Ollivander took out a piece of parchment from a drawer. "Lin Belloc." "Yes, it's me. Is it accustomed to use the left hand or the right hand?" Right hand." A silver measuring tape floated out of Ollivander's pocket automatically, and floated to Lin's application. "Come, stretch your right arm, yes, very good, that's it." The tape made Lin feel a little twisted, like a twisting snake. At this time Ollivander had already waved his wand and pulled out a wooden box from the wooden cabinet. The wooden box floated onto Lin's long table, and the lid opened automatically. "Beach with fire dragon nerve, 12 inches, a powerful combination, come and try." He stuffed the wand into Lin's hand, and Lin waved it into the air somewhat stupidly. Nothing happened. But in his mind, the voice of the system rang, "The fit is 23%. Lin was startled. "Can still have this function?" Just as he was stunned, Ollivander's hand movement did not stop. He took the wand back from Lin's hand, and put another one into his hand. "You don't seem to be very suitable, then try this, hawthorn and phoenix feathers, 9 inches, curved and easy to use. 51% cohesion. Is better than before, but there is still no special effect. I like it very much, picky customer. How about trying this one? Willow and unicorn hair, 15 inches, long overall and very tough." This time the magic wand finally showed some changes. Lin felt like something had flowed into the stick at his fingertips, and a cluster of brilliant sparks spewed out from the front end of it. "The fit is 76%. Ollivander nodded with satisfaction. "It likes you very much, this is it." "Wait, sir." Lin interrupted him suddenly, and pointed to the tall wooden cabinets. "Can I see your wands for myself first?" Ollivander's expression was obviously a bit wrong. It was the first time he met a guest like Lin who offered to make a request. Of course, this is your right as a guest." Lin felt that in this wand shop, the wand in his hand might not be the one with the highest degree of compatibility with him. Although I don't know how much the wand and the wizard's cohesion will affect the release and use of magic, Lin thinks that the higher the better. Don't need to take out each wand to touch, he can detect the coherence of each wand as long as through the cabinet system. Lin started from the first row of wooden cabinets. It looked like he was walking aimlessly, but in fact, the sound of the system in his brain kept ringing. It took more than 20 minutes, just when Ollivander's patience was about to be polished. Lin finally browsed all the wands, and finally chose the one with the highest degree of compatibility with him. 92% cohesion. I think this magic wand is the most suitable for me. What do you think of Mr. Ollivander? Lin lightly waved the magic wand in his hand, and the front end of the wand left a bright silver track, which remained in the air for a long time. Ollivander looked at the magic wand in his hand in disbelief and muttered, "Perfect, perfect combination, it seems to be specially made for you, Mr. Belloc. How did you find it?" "Well, just feel it, an indescribable feeling," Lin said vaguely. "The magic wand chooses the wizard." Ollivander suddenly yelled decisively, "It must be guiding you and let you find it. This is a strong evidence that the magic wand itself is actually spiritual. I want to write it down and record it in Ollivander's family tree." Ollivander grabbed his messy hair and ran around the house excitedly. The spirituality of fart is obviously my choice. Lin rolled his eyes secretly, then stopped the excited Ollivander, who couldn't help himself. Mr. Ollivander, can you tell me the characteristics of this wand first? Why not? Quiet wood with Yuki's heartstrings, 11 and 1/4 inches, really rare combination, mysterious and difficult to control, very suitable. Speaking of this, Ollivander paused suddenly. Lin looked at him curiously. What is suitable for? Ollivander swallowed, as if tabooing something, but still said it. For those sane, quiet but occasionally crazy wizards. Lin was a little inexplicable, he didn't understand what the nervous old man meant. You have obtained a magic wand of your own, the time-limited mission is completed, and the magic index is +1. After Lin paid Ollivander's 9-gallon fees, the system followed up with a reminder that the mission was completed. Compared with other magic talents, the change after the increase in the number of magic power index makes Lin feel more obvious. Something in his body used to be like a slender seedling, but now it seems to have eaten a golden sapling, suddenly it grows to the size of a small tree. Although he is still young, he looks much more different than before. Those things should be magic. After completing a time-limited mission, Lin turned his wand skillfully around his fingertips, and then gently stroked the smooth and straight body of the wand. The slightly cold touch made him feel good. Out of Ollivander's wand shop, Lin bought enough Hogwarts textbooks at Lihen bookstore, as well as some books recommended by the clerk that are suitable for beginners in magic. There are a lot of books, but they delivered free shipping. Lin left the address at home, and the manager of the bookstore promised to let Owl deliver him home within a week. After, there are some other utensils, such as the cauldron. The shop provides Owl free shipping service, which is convenient for wizards, but it does not treat owls as human beings. It seems that there is no need to treat it as a human. In the end, he only had Hogwarts school gown and hadn't bought it yet. But this kind of thing needs to be tailored on site. After Lin has finished measuring the size, it will take some time for the clothes to be made. He has nothing to do, so he goes out and squats in front of the magical animal pet shop next to him, teasing him. An owl that looks sullen. Are you a new student at Hogwarts this year? Are you interested in buying an owl as a pet? A clerk was chattering about their magical animals to Lin. Although this owl looks a bit introverted in appearance, its parents are all common owls in Hogwarts. They have good blood. After being born, they have been carefully trained by the trainer in our shop. They are definitely excellent. Wizard companion. Lin lightly touched the pointed beak of the owl, which is known as the fine pedigree. The owl shrank his necklace head and stared at him with dissatisfaction. It doesn't seem to like me very much. Lin spread his hands, and I have no plans to keep a pet. Just as he was about to get up and go back to see the progress of making the school gown, suddenly he heard a little soft and cute voice again. Hey! Hey! Lin turned to look at the source of the sound. It was a pure white hamster, about the size of a fist, and a round body. It was lying on the cage between the iron bars and looked at him with a pair of bright black eyes. It looked cute. Lin was amused by its sound, and he squatted down again in front of the hamster's cage, smiling openly. As soon as you speak, you know it is the old second element. Now. The hamster tilted his head and looked at him, as if wondering what he said. What kind of magical animal is this? Lin pointed to the hamster and asked the clerk. The clerk at the pet shop didn't seem to know the origin of this thing, hesitated for a long time, and blatantly said that this is a rat with a big background. Its ancestors have relatives who cooperated with Merlin to do magic experiments, and it is a proper noble blood. Lin immediately got up and expressed his love to sell or not, he could only sell 1 gallon at most. Then, this hamster belongs to him. Holding the hamster cage, Lin shook it in front of his eyes. The hamster was not afraid, and blinked his small eyes to look at its new owner. He did not plan to keep pets, but the sound of this mouse made him rare, and he recalled some things in his previous life. Was supposed to be predestined, so Lin bought it. Since I have decided to raise you, I should give you a name. Lin raised his head and thought for a while. Since you are an old two-dimensional element, how about a small buried? Hey! Hey! Xiaomei's response couldn't tell whether it was approval or rejection, but its name was given by its owner. Lin took Xiao Bui back to the robe shop, and Mrs. Morkan had already prepared the school robe and was waiting for him. Child, come and try and see what else needs to be changed. He put on his robe and took a photo in the mirror. Is still so handsome, whether it is normal clothes or wizard's clothes, his appearance is set off very high grade. Thank you madam, I am very satisfied. Lin said to Madame Morkan, can I stay here for a while? Professor Fox and I have agreed that I will wait for him here. Mrs. Morkan helped him wrap up the robe, of course you can. He didn't sit down, just opened a Hogwarts textbook, and opened it roughly. Judging from the professional perspective of Lin's past life, the cursed textbook he has is really not very good. But considering the use of magic by sorcerers, this situation is indeed excusable. After all, learning magic can't be dealt with by memorizing. It is very practical. It is difficult to fully explain the process of casting a spell only through the description of words. Just like art students in high school, whether it is art or music, they need professional tutoring instead of learning by themselves behind closed doors. But there are some simple spells that can be learned by just reading a book, at least in Lin's view, it is not difficult. What's wrong today? How come so many goblins come out of Gringotts? Mrs. Morkan's whisper to herself caught Lin's attention. He looked at the long street and Diagon alley outside the window. There were many ugly-looking, short-sized humanoid creatures patrolling around. They are wearing Gringotts special uniforms, their faces are serious and their steps are fast, seems to be chasing someone. Kurt is the department head of the Diagon alley branch of Gringotts UK. He is in a very bad mood now. Because just not long ago, Gringotts was thief. Yes, Gringotts can also be thieves. Although rare, it is not surprising. What was lost this time is not important, but the nature of this matter is very bad. If it is not handled properly, it will have a great impact on the reputation of Gringotts, and even the reputation of the fairies. We lost him, sir. Some goblins came back to report to him. Kit's ugly face suddenly became even more ugly, like an orange about to break. You'd better tell me some good news now, or I will send you a bad news that you don't want to hear soon. Kurt looked at his subordinates coldly. You reading www.yuyugonshu.com? Not at all. Be kind. The goblin was very nervous. He stammered and said, we saw his face while chasing him, and some goblin recognized who he was. Who is it? Kit's spirit was shocked, and it was still rewarding. Hans Johnson. Kurt had no impression of people. Who is he? The goblin swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He is the owner of the stolen treasure house. Kurt looked at his subordinates as if he was really looking at a brainless giant. He will steal his own things. Not only that, in our records, this Hans Johnson was already dead 9 years ago. Are you going to tell me this is a ghost committing the crime? Kurt thought it was absurd. Could it be a compound decoction? You said that he has been dead for 9 years. What kind of potion master can make potions that can keep the effect for so long? And what's the point? He touched his chin and fell into deep thought. After for a while, he looked at his subordinates again. Is it possible to find things back? The fairy shook his head. That thing has little value, and we didn't leave any means of tracking on it. Kurt clicked on the wooden table with his slender finger. Things are probably unavoidable. Although the lost things are worthless, our reputation is invaluable. Be prepared to control public opinion. Don't be afraid of spending money. Try to let the daily profit focus on the ghost crimes and dilute the existence of Gringotts. These things should not be taught by me. You should know how to do it yourself. I understand.